Greetings. It's Wolfgang Deg Kirtan here.
And Jacob.
Awesome. And our podcast now is called Cosmic Affiliation, which is really exciting. And at least that's the name we're rolling with now, with the intent of keeping our affiliation true, and that affiliation is one, and that affiliation extends throughout the cosmos, through all dimensions. And with that, we'll just take a moment to honor the space in which we're about to dive into. It's the full moon on Martin Luther King Day, so just to acknowledge the celestial and societal days, calendars. May we bring honor to the earth and to the world and to our talk. May we be true channels of that which wants to be expressed. And with that, I give gratitude. Thank you. Thank you, Jacob. Thank you, viewers, and thank you for all who may be tuning in. So I'm just really honored to be here.
Thank you, Deg. And what an honor it is to be with you. And I revel and marvel in the conversations that we share, and it brings me great joy, and our connection ignites a fire within me. So I thank you. And also for me, say a little prayer to transition into the heart from the head, moving the energy downwards, and seeing what arises from the heart, and that wisdom that can stream forth when we tune into that space and that epicenter and that that realm that holds much abundance. And honoring the moon, the mama moon, tonight as she shines forth brightly upon all beings, wherever you are, wherever you remain, wherever you stand or sit or lie. She's there, twinkling in, tuning in, messing around with your head, messing around with your heart and your body. So we give thanks tonight for the full moon as well.
Shalom.
Shalom.
Man, Martin Luther King, what a great person. He's definitely been one of my biggest inspirations in terms of the nonviolent path. And I think that in our society, what courage it would take to walk that path, especially when you look at the atrocities of our government in relation to race. And even within our lifetime, I mean, with just 50 years within our lifetime, we had segregation legalized. And Martin Luther King, he's the age of my grandmother. He could very easily still be alive, and during that time, he had to fight for his right as a human, as a Black human. It's crazy.
It's crazy.
It's absurd. And then to say, hey, I forgive you. We just want to be equal. Hey, I forgive you. Let's love each other. Hey, I forgive you. I dream of holding hands together. And then to still get violently attacked and above all, to get murdered. It's like, it just touches me in a deep way. And I've gone back and forth in my own being between the violent and the nonviolent path, but to me, the answer is clear. The nonviolent path is more impactful.
Mm.
If Jesus was more impactful by not being violent, Buddha was more impactful by not being violent. Martin Luther King, in my opinion, was more impactful than his colleagues because he was nonviolent.
Mm.
And so I give gratitude and thanks for who he was as an individual. And one thing also comes to mind, that another lesson that I learned from him is that he says, I do not judge a man by my own character. And that was groundbreaking for me, because when you don't judge a man by your own character, then what is there to even judge? And you become non-judgmental. You're like, hey, that's you. This is me. These are my wishes. This is what I want to bring. And so yeah, just give thanks. I grew up in a majority Black and Mexican community. I'm half Mexican, but yeah, so I was oblivious to social injustices because I grew up the minority in my classes, oftentimes being the lightest skinned kid in my class of 4,000 students at my high school. So to awaken to the social injustices was a very real experience. Yeah, so.
Mm.
Now, you were saying that right before this call, you were saying about Martin Luther King.
Martin Luther King's, thank you. I was soaking in the nonviolent part because, you know, when I hear the word nonviolent, I think of two people, MLK and Gandhi. And to see their attitude towards the oppressor is remarkable and inspiring. And for me, I don't have conscious oppressors in my life who are harming me physically, or sending racial slurs at me, or who are trying to take my land that I'm just peacefully living on. So I don't have that. And I don't experience that. And so what I reap from their teachings is the very basis of every day attempting to see every person in that way, as what you just shared, with that non-judgmental character, just seeing them as another human being, without all the things that we have attached onto these labels that we are as human beings. And non-violent, it's a way of life. And they both spoke to that. It's an attitude, but it's a way of life. Seeing all creatures, all things, movement too. Like, how do I move in my space non-violently? How do I touch my own body and like move and eat non-violently? And it's interesting, I've only been able to come to that by recognizing the harm that I've done and the aggression that takes place to my own being by the way I just act, almost just acting unconsciously in my day-to-day life or with other people. And big gratitude to those beings.
Mm-hmm.
And so to share what we spoke about briefly before, one of MLK's main spiritual advisor was this reverend named Howard Thurman. And he was this African-American Christian mystic and was very involved with the teachings of Christ and took it deep, deep, deep in reaping out and stretching out, like, what was Christ actually teaching? And then how can we actually embody that? And so he was constantly with MLK, from my understanding, or always a phone, like somewhere nearby where MLK could ask him for spiritual advice of like, okay, these great teachings of Christ of love everyone, or reaching states of consciousness, how can we take these concepts and apply them, which was MLK's mastery, into a situation, a world that is facing the onslaught that it was facing? And I've reaped a lot of beauty out of Howard Thurman's teachings. And I did pull one quote right before we started, so I'm going to share this. He says, "The place where the imagination shows its greatest powers as the angelos, the messenger of God, is in the miracle which it creates when one man, standing in his place, is able, while remaining there, to put himself in another man's place, to send his imagination forth to establish a beachhead in another man's spirit, and from that vantage point, so to blend with the other's landscape, that what he sees and feels is authentic. This is the great adventure in human relations." To be to another human being what is needed at the time that the need is most urgent and most acutely felt, this is to participate in the precise act of redemption.
Dang, bro, that's a mic drop. Oh my God. Goosebumps.
Yeah.
Wow. Bro. I'm gonna need to get that from you.
We'll put it down in the comments.
Yeah, because that is powerful. And that's like embodies actually the person who I want to be. And the person who I want to be is a servant. And the person, but like that servant is not a copy paste cookie cutter thing. And it's also, you know, I want to serve my partner, my girlfriend, and yet I can't. Sometimes I have a hard time doing that, but the way that he just said that made it seem fun.
Yeah. Fun.
To cast our imagination into the landscape of another being to meet the needs of that individual is to partake in, I forgot what he said, but ceremony, to partake in that which life asks us to be.
And how incredible, like, we have this imagination. It's not some, oh yeah, you know, blah imagination. It's how incredible we can use that to come into like harmonious relationship with another human being, and like feel maybe for a brief moment their spirit, right? Not just step into another's shoes, but he's basically saying step into the arena with their spirit so you can feel their spirit too.
Yeah, I'm gonna take him on as one of my spiritual teachers. I'm buying in a book. Watch out, that's happening right now. Man.
And then at the end, he talks about what he says, to participate in that precise interaction is the act of redemption, which
The
going
act
back,
of redemption. That was
that's what MLK, like, his whole movement and what he preached and showed and taught and emphasized is how do we redeem that human connection? Because we're just humans, we're not just humans, we are humans.
Yeah.
Both of us are humans.
Man, do you mind if I look up redemption right quick?
Yeah, please. The word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The action of saving or being saved from sin, error, or evil.
Interesting.
So you said to participate in redemption? Is that what it was?
Yeah, he says this is to participate in the precise act of redemption.
Yeah.
And I will say, from my experience with the Christian mystics, they are still using biblical terms, but the biblical terms like redemption or sin or devil, they use it in a different context. It's not like you're a sinner, you should be shameful.
Right.
And it's not like God is giving you redemption, this wrathful being, right? Like he's saving you. So there is, just wanted to say that I find a filter.
Well, it's really interesting because I used to be really involved with my church, and we would do mission trips, and we had this shirt that said redeemed on it. And this guy asked me, he just randomly saw me, he's like, redeemed from what? And I was like, he just got me. I was like 15, like, I don't know, actually, like sin. Am I being redeemed from sin, or what am I doing actually? What am I actually being redeemed? What am I saying in this shirt? And that stuck with me. And that moment to me happened for this moment 10 years ago,
Yes.
Yeah, wow. The act of saving or being saved from. And I'm so thankful that you brought that up, because when we tell people, like, a lot of the Christian narrative that you'll hear, especially in the South, is you need to be redeemed. Like you were saying, like this wrathful God, you're the sinner, you're the messed up person, and you need to be redeemed. But like, I've been so far removed from that, I didn't think about it in those terms. So I'm thankful that you brought that awareness. And to me, this redemption it's grace itself. It's to participate in grace, to be involved with the graciousness of life. And we've all been extended that grace in some way or form. We've all been extended that redemption in some way, at some point in our lives. And we can participate more in it, and we can actually be the embodiment of redemption itself through helping the world. I don't like the word saved, but through releasing the cycles of pain and suffering. And that's exactly what Martin Luther King did. And he got killed for it, man. And then you listen, you turn on today. I love rap music, man. I love it so much, but I can't listen to it. I turned it on today, and it was straight demon talk, talking about horrible stuff.
Yeah.
And this is just on Apple Music. Like any 13-year-old kid now clicks on Apple Music, clicks on the hip hop, and these are the top 10 songs. And it's horrible. I felt like I had to redeem myself after it. I was like, ooh, sorry, I even let that into my field.
Mm.
But it's like, that's what gets idolized in our culture today. And it's so messed up. It is so violent.
Totally. And it exactly that. It perpetuates the violence.
It perpetuates the violence, and rightfully so, because you grow up, again, using the act of imagination.
Yeah.
You grow up in a situation where that violence is life or death. And then even if you don't grow up in that environment, your environment idolizes it. So I don't judge people for listening to that. And I don't judge the people that are singing it. I'm just thinking to myself, like, like, yeah.
And after you shared the definition, at least the Google dictionary definition of redemption, which I presume is the one you referred to, contemplating like redemption, or you're redeeming something. And it's almost like the act of redemption is, we've gone so far in this like pit hole, this darkness, this sheer darkness of aggression, of violence, of anger, of the rap music that, like, one example could be the rap music that is more present today in this culture. And redeeming yourself would be actually awakening out of that, because that energy or that music or that racism that was happening, still happening, but was what MLK was speaking to, that was disabling us from being a full human being with a full heart and able to see one another and able to extend kindness to one another. And so redeeming yourself is redeem that darker energy that you've been living in and that you've been allowing in and that you've been acting on, so that you can come out of that. Like, save yourself from that. How painful it is, how much you suffer and how much you cause others suffering, consciously and unconsciously. So that the redemption, it is so powerful when you think about being able to change yourself, save yourself in that way.
You've reminded me so powerfully of a really powerful story. Do you know the story of the Amazing Grace song?
No, maybe, but not at the moment.
So there was a captain of a slave ship, and he would basically travel around along the coast of Africa up to Europe. And he was a really common, really kind of like a well-known slave ship. He had live cargo, human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And they go into this super treacherous storm. It's like the worst storm ever. And they're chained up at the bottom. And he has to chain himself to the rudder. He has his people chain his arms to the ship, because if he lets go, then the ship will just spin out of control. It's not gonna, the captain needs to man the ship through this crazy thing. So he literally had himself chained to it. And they're just going through the storm. And he prays to God. He says, if I make it through this storm, I'll turn around and let all of the people go, and I'll give my life to you. And so while they're going through this crazy storm, he's like, they're like at the peak of it, like it's make or break at this moment. He hears the humming of what we know as Amazing Grace. And he started to hum that melody with the people in his ship that were chained to slaves. And that song was the redemption of him. And so Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. And I always thought when I heard that song, what's the sound? What is he talking about? Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. And in my spirituality, I was like, oh, it's the sound of silence. It's like the peace in the heart. That's what I thought it was. But no, it's the sound of his people that got captured and saved him through this horrible situation. They got through it, and he stuck true to his word and became a missionary, became a man of God. And that's Amazing Grace. That's redemption. You know, that's powerful.
Yeah.
So I
That
don't
is
know.
amazing grace. Thank you. Thank you. That
That
is
whole
amazing
story
grace.
just like came to the surface through that.
And the way I'm perceiving it is the people who were his slaves were the ones that were humming this tune.
Yes, it was an
So
African tune.
even more radical is the people
Exactly.
who he's, who he's captured, who he's holding as slaves, were his gateway into that redemption. They were the ones that actually brought him to his own liberation.
Yeah.
That is grace. And it goes to show, like, I just like to tie it back in with the theme of MLK is, why are we running against and warring each other because that person has a different color skin or has a different belief than us? Like, they're actually the gateway into that transformation together, because we want to blame, right? We want to blame that person or be angry at that person. And what does it mean to actually like turn towards that and be like, hey, maybe you have something to offer me and I have something to offer you. Thank you for sharing the story. It's beautiful.
Yeah. It's, it's a culmination of like leading to almost being humbled to silence through this conversation. It's for me personally, because it's just like, yeah, Martin Luther King, he's on my altar. He's on my altar space. And he has been for a couple of years. And I just like, I haven't had many mentors like that really have guided me through my life and that have really stuck with me through the thick of life and have like seen through the other side. And even if they were willing, I might not have allowed them, So with that, I just like want to emulate that type of leadership. He's just a pastor and he spoke on Capitol Hill, at Washington Memorial to like this huge crowd, and just like his wave of impact on the world and on America is like just awe-inspiring.
Mm. And how inspiring another famous text that is well known are his letters at Birmingham jail. And amongst the present violence he was facing, he was still able to preach that. And that's such a great testament. And it's also like reminding me of Nelson Mandela. He's put in jail for I don't know how many years, many years. It's over a decade, maybe even 2 decades. I feel like it's 27 years.
What?
Yeah, you want to look that up for me, please?
Yeah.
Thank you. Nelson Mandela.
27 years, man.
Is that what it says? Yeah. And still be able to preach that nonviolence.
It's like that's a mic drop. It's like to be it's literally comparable to being that's Christ. That's Christ-like.
Yeah.
To be stabbed in the stomach, to be stabbed on the cross, and to be like, forgive them, Father. They don't know what they're doing. You know, it's like that's Christ. Like that is Christ consciousness. That is the power of love and forgiveness. And I just thank you to those who have extended that, because it's affected us in ways that we don't even know. You know, maybe Martin Luther King or Nelson Mandela's maybe their act of love has impacted us in a way that we don't even know. And certainly Christ as well. Certainly the Buddha, the Dalai Lama.
And I want to add, like, we might not know, and also we might not know yet.
Yeah.
Because it could be coming, or it could show up in a different way in our life, in a new way, or it may not be revealed to us, and that's still just as beautiful.
Yeah. Still just as impactful.
So I'm curious with you, what are practices or attitudes or ethics or whatever it may be? How do you anchor or attempt to anchor that non-violence attitude in your life through what means?
Thank you for bringing it to that. I really appreciate that. I come from a very violent history in my personal genetics. My great grandfather was a Nazi in the Nazi regime. That's like still not that long ago, in the 1900s. And it's translated down generational through blood of being violent in in communication.
Okay.
And I still find myself being violent in my communication, not necessarily like noticeable, but in a way that I know, in a way that it affects me and my thoughts. And that's like being extremely vulnerable. I told a friend that today. I told a friend how horrible I am to some extent. And she was like, oh, I'll remember that. And I was like, no, like I'm trying to be vulnerable here, because we all have a quality of humanity that we all share that might not look very pretty at all. And so like being vulnerable in this space as well, of being like, my thoughts can be violent, And my partner, Jenna, she practices nonviolent communication. And that's basically like a step-by-step process to communicate your feelings without disregarding somebody else's.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a layout to communicate nonviolently, or to communicate each other's feelings and thoughts, and to be able to listen to each other. And so I've done a lot of work in my own inner self, but as I stand right now, I feel like it's totally fresh. I feel like I have so much to still hone in on, and to refine and within my own being, and to redeem, that it's, although I've been doing this for 10 years, I feel like I haven't even started. To some degree, I'm sure if I had a contrast of my thoughts then and now, but like, it's almost like I've become more sensitive to it. So therefore it feels like that contrast is wider. And so it feels like, man, you know what? I have a lot of work to do. What am I doing? I'm talking about it right now with you. And I am open to adopting practices of participating in the act of redemption. So that's actually like, that's the goal.
Sure.
Um, I'm doing yoga, I'm praying. I want to lead. I want to be a leader in my community, whatever way that is. At my school, I'm the president of my class, so I try to uphold, or I do uphold, a very nonviolent way of communicating with them. But it comes down to the small things. How do I treat my cat? How do I treat my dog? How do I treat my girlfriend? How are my thoughts when nobody's looking? And they can get savage. And so that's the work, is to dive into that awareness.
Mm.
And yeah, can you remind me of the quote, of that name of the guy, the name of the guy that you read the quote from?
Howard Thurman.
Howard Duran. Yeah, I want to incorporate that. The way that he said that was elegant.
Mm-hmm.
That's scripture. Like, that was scripture. Thank you for bringing that to the table. Thank you, Howard Duran. Thank you, Martin Luther King. What about you?
Beautiful share. Similar in different ways. I believe my initial practice with what it could be termed as like socially engaged spirituality, which is kind of that nonviolent nature, at least the practice of it, started when I took a class on restorative justice.
I meant to bring that up.
Yeah.
I meant to bring that up. Look, okay, yes, that's a big, big part of my life as well.
It's incredible work. For those who do not know what restorative justice is, it is a practice, and I'd love to hear your additions. It's a system of restorative justice that is based upon indigenous practices. So in certain indigenous communities, and specifically a lot of the founders of restorative justice, which I believe is Angela Davis in some degree,
And
based upon, say again?
Angela Davis, yeah, through her sister, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all based also upon the Aborigines in Australia, and other indigenous cultures throughout the world, but there's a practice of when there's a conflict in the community, whether it's a disagreement or it's some form of
A wrongdoing.
a wrongdoing of any sorts. Our culture tends to alienate that person, push them away, go to jail. You did bad, you have to leave, and you need to go X, Y, and Z. You have to be in jail for the rest of your life. You have to die. You get the death punishment or penalty, death penalty, punishment.
Yep.
Or even in small communities, it's like, we have to fire you, or actually you can't be a part of us anymore, or families, we have to ostracize you because we don't agree. So anyways, that's our culture. Whereas the restorative justice model evolves and, is birthed out of this concept where a lot of indigenous communities, when there's an act of wrongdoing from one person to another, or just one person, it's actually the exact opposite. There's such a big wound in them that they need to be brought in deeper into the community. We need to work with this such wrongdoing together. Alienating would just cause more harm to both parties. So let's bring it in, bring the person in. And what does justice look like when we can all come together? Because there's also a recognition that a community means everyone. There's a unity in community. So if they just did such an act of wrongdoing, there must be something that I am doing wrong as well.
Yeah. Yeah, to some degree.
To some degree.
Yeah.
Advocating and just being responsible for each other.
Being responsible for, that's so right. And so to immediately piggyback off of that is, you hear a lot of older generations being like the younger generation, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you handed us this.
Yeah.
That generation handed the younger generation and we're reflecting back to you what we are.
Sure.
And so Boulder County actually has restorative justice.
Yeah.
And I volunteered with them, and I was a restorative justice facilitator.
Really?
Yeah, it was really cool. They don't do it for big cases yet. It was almost like, but they do it for teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really amazing to be a part of that. And restorative justice focuses on restoration instead of punitive.
Yeah.
Punitive, like, you took off my arm, I'm gonna cut your arm off. You are guilty. Isn't that a weird term? Guilty or not guilty? Like, yeah. I find you guilty, innocent until proven guilty. Just that term guilty, like what?
Which is probably, quick side note, I feel like that little asterisk at the bottom of a page is derived from and formulated from Christian ideology.
Yeah. Yeah. And so in Boulder, this is what restorative justice looked like. Let's say me and you get into a fight we're high schoolers, and we fight. We go in. Then instead of going into juvenile detention where more kids are fighting, they get you in the room, they get me in the room, they get our parents in the room, then they get elders in the community, and they bring in the principal, and they bring in the teacher. And so this is actually a scenario that I was in.
Okay.
Where there was two kids that fought. I was a facilitator. There was a mediator who's totally is totally unbiased. And then the kids' parents were in the room, and the kids were like, yo, what's up? Like, the kids got to hash it out.
Yeah.
They're like, basically, this dude, my friend told me that you were doing this to me. And I didn't like that. So I approached you in the hallway and fought you. And the kid was like, yo, that's not what happened. Like, this is what happened. And then they were like, oh, so we're cool. And they were like, yeah, we're cool. And then the parents were like, they got to interact. And they were like, yo, his mom died. He has anger issues. And then it's like drops everybody into their heart. And then it's like restoring the community between these two kids, healing them. And then on top of that, there's a solution. So it's like, yo, what's going to make everybody happy?
Mm-hmm.
And I am a yoga teacher. And at the time, I was like, you know what? I teach yoga. I teach breath work. And if you want to be able to help control your anger, you should try some breath work. So the principal loved that idea and had me come to the school once a week for a couple months to teach kids breath work. Boom, yoga in public schools through Restorative Justice.
Done.
And I got to hang out with these kids that were like fighting 2 weeks ago, and now they're like in the same room with their shoes off, breathing together. It's like, it's beautiful.
It is.
On a bigger scale, it's like, let's say somebody kills somebody. Let's get the victims of the family, that the person that you killed, let's get y'all in a room together.
Right. Another side note, footnote is like when both parties are ready and are able.
Yeah.
Because there's, of course, like just
that's going to be hard. Yeah.
There's residue trauma, of course, and it could be years, and that's okay until the victim's family is able to come into a relationship, and maybe never.
Yeah.
With the oppressor.
Maybe
or
never.
So-called oppressor, one did action.
But the more that our society opens up to these possibilities, though, the more normal it's going to be.
Yeah.
To the point of if you point your gun at somebody, you're going to have to face their family. Like, that's where our culture could get to. Where you have to face that dude's wife, that dude's kids, and that dude's mom that you just shot. You know it before you even pull the trigger.
Yeah.
Imagine that. And they're going to meet your mom, and they're going to meet your kids or whatever. And y'all all about to get in the room, and you're going to have to own up to that. And it's like, that would stop people in their tracks. To some degree, I think.
Totally.
Like, and that's the hopes, right? Like,
this topic is so deep.
It's so deep, and it spawned out of, you said it was Angela
Davis.
Angela Davis. Do you know the name of her sister?
I think it starts with an S.
Well, I met her at a Kundalini. It's funny. It's a yoga gathering.
Uh-huh.
And she came and talked, and she was like, for however many years, I couldn't forgive them for killing my sister.
Yeah.
My sister was a social justice, social rights,
What's her name? Do you have it?
I'm really kind of ashamed that I don't have it, but that's where I'm at. Fania Davis.
Fania Davis.
Yeah.
Fania Davis.
Yeah. And I think they don't have a Wikipedia for Fania. They do for Angela. But Fania. But yeah, basically Angela was like, I was living in my own perpetual violence in my mind. I couldn't forgive these people.
Mm-hmm.
And like out of that pain and suffering of her not being able to move on and forgive, like led her to basically being the spokesperson of restorative justice, where she was able to forgive and have restoration. And it's like all people of color that live in the United States to even function in society is grace to me.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you, if I was like to cast my imagination and to know what my ancestors would have gone through, and to not, and to just be like, I forgive y'all. Like, I don't know. It's just.
Wow. I love that. I love that. Just to function in society, in this world, is act of grace.
Yeah. Because there's a feeling, right? In my imagination, there's a feeling of like, fuck all of y'all. Sorry for my language, but I'm getting out of here.
Yeah.
That's what y'all did to my ancestors.
Yeah.
And what y'all are still doing right now through our prison system that is so unjust. It's basically modern day slavery.
Yeah. A few things come up off of that. One is a quote by Angela Davis that says, we have a criminal justice system that harms people who harm people to show that harming people is bad. And the first time I read that quote, it instantly got imprinted on my system. I was like, wow, showing the incredulous and such strange culture that we live in that is like continuing to stay in these cycles of harming other people, to show that harming other people is terrible. You shouldn't do it. So we're going to harm these people. And also what comes up is the phrase internalized oppression, internalized oppression. So these words were both enlightened to me by two people, one of which is an African American woman named Dr. Joy DeGury-Leary, and she talks about this something called post-traumatic slave syndrome, which is still present. And it shows the minor manifestations and major manifestations of how slavery is still persisting in our culture today. Brilliant person, brilliant speaker, and powerful. And the other person who I've seen bring it up a lot is Eduardo Duran, who is an indigenous speaker on advocacy for wounding, seeking wounding, the people who are constantly wounded within. He talks about a lot about intergenerational trauma and how these cycles of shame, blame, anger, hate get passed right down into the generations. Anyways, he talks about it as internalized oppression being when you are being oppressed by another force. It's so easy to turn yourself into that oppressor in some ways, which kind of speaks to what Angela Davis happened to her. She was so angry and caught up with the emotions of what happened to her sister that she couldn't come out of that for a long time. And it's I just wanted to name that because when we are hurt by another, we, in some cases, we can see ourselves as that monster because we received that hate. So there must be something wrong with us. And in other instances, we are so angry that that anger and confusion turns to our own hatred and our own cycles of oppression towards ourselves. And the last thing, Dag, is on the theme of restorative justice. I'm reminded of another great speaker. His name is Kazu Haga. And he is inspired a lot by MLK's work, to bring it full circle, and which talks and speaks a lot about the term which MLK spoke of, beloved community. Like, what is beloved community? Beloved community. And how can we act and engage in a beloved community? And the one scenario that I've heard Kazu speak of is when he was facilitating some form of a restorative justice council. It was to a man who was on a death sentence, and he had killed a kid or two kids or something. And so he met with the mother. And Kazu speaks of the next 5-6 hours, he just watched both of them cry to each other. And it breaks my heart, and to even think that, yeah, we can reach that place to have a beloved community where a man who just killed this woman's kids can cry in her arms, and she can cry to him and share that grief. And that's beloved community. And I feel that's really what MLK speaks to.
Man, brought some tears. Thank you.
Me too.
Man, thank you for bringing that. Thank you for being well read in that. Thank you.
It shot into my heart.
Yeah, that did too. It brought it. May we continue to anchor that together, the beloved community. And I love that term, man. I thought about that being like a church name, like beloved community. But it's not just church. It's not limited to religion. It's our beloved community as humans. And that extends to the human family as a whole. Because our affiliation, it's one, the same, all of humanity. We share the same affiliation, and
the same affiliation of breathing and being a human and living and having difficulties and having loved ones and pains, and we share that affiliation. I kind of want to end what's coming up now, if we're both feeling like it's ready to wrap, like tie the little bow.
Yeah.
Big bow is a contemplation for anybody who's listening, as well as you and I, of we're all a part of some community, whether that's a gaming community, whether that's our family, whether that's work, whether that's a ceremony community, whatever it is, there's community. And so how can we even like switch the knob just a little bit to start engaging with that community as if it was a beloved community? Like, what does that even mean? So something to contemplate.
Thank
How
you.
can we show up? How can we
Yeah,
show up?
how can we show up? How can we participate in the act of redemption, of saving us from the
Yes.
evil
Yes.
that
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that call to action, because that's what it's about.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jacob, for this conversation.
Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that it's MLK Day, so we're gonna do a talk today
Yeah.
on the inspiration and teachings of that brilliant human who shared his message with us all.
What a trailblazer. Man. So we come to a close. Thank you. Thank you to all who listened. Thank you, Jacob. Maybe we continue to do more of this. I think I just love this. I just love what these talks are bringing up within me, within each other, and reflections to those who are listening. So I bow and give gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you and appreciate every person who's listening. And what can stream forth together. How beautiful. And what an honor is we can do this. We can share different places in the world and speak of greatness.
Yeah. We're leveraging technology. It's really amazing. We're leveraging it to perpetuate
Yes. Yes.
the amazingness of love and what we have to bring. So thank you. And with that, we'll drop some links in the comments below or in the description below of pretty much everything that we feel in it. And, like and subscribe because we'll be coming back. We'll be coming back. So bless.